It's the Marc Lee Show, bringing you enlightenment and culture.
You already. All right, this is the radio show with Marc Lee, and of course, we've got some amazing guests that are joining us as well. We've got a person on here that is involved in the legal field and things of that nature. But we're going to start everything off with Too Cute. I found her on LinkedIn, and she's doing some tremendous things in the entertainment world and things of that nature. So definitely, how are you doing on today? I know a lot of folks are coping with what's going on in the world in terms of medical issues and things of that nature. Coronavirus, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. So a lot of folks are still, confined in their homes in one form or fashion or another. We're here in North Carolina, and we've moved to some of the phases, but definitely have not gone through all the phases that you can go through. So we are still having some things that are not fully 100%. Of course, you can't go to a restaurant. I think that some of the restaurants might be around 25 or 20 people that can be in them and things of that nature, but you can get to those, and there have been some curfews that have been placed and things of that nature. So tell folks where you are at and what's going on where you are in terms of dealing with this pandemic that we're in the middle of, and just also share a little bit about what you are about and what your entertainment career has been like. Because like I said, just tell folks where you are right now, and then we'll go into a conversation. And like I said, I'll be bringing in some of my other guests, Mark Jacobson, who's a lawyer, as well as another gentleman that'll be talking about a product that he's got as well. But we'll start off with you, Too Cute. So tell folks about your background.
Oh, wow. I forgot half of that. Let's start off with the fact that I'm 66 years old, okay? And you gave me way too much information to get started with. I have to do little bites.
No problem.
Little bites at a time. But my name is Too Cute, and that's Tukute. Tu is French and Spanish for you, and cute because, you're looking at me. And Too Cute began about 17 years ago. I was an instructor at the homeless shelter for women.
Oh, okay.
And when I was teaching them, it was a little difficult for me because I had never taught from the ground, like zero. They knew nothing. We had to start out with punching. This is the on and off button on the computer, and literally. And I found out that it was difficult because I didn't understand that these women grew up with, I'm too tall, too short, too fat, too skinny, too dark, too light, too something for me not to be able to achieve being the person I think I need to be. And I'm not even allowed to think that I need to be more than you're going to allow me to be. And so I came up with the character, Too Cute, who was visually unattractive, but she had no idea, absolutely no idea that she was not God's gift to men. So they loved her, they embraced her, and she kept with me the whole time. And when I started doing comedy, that became my name and my character. Of course, at the time, I was going through menopause. So the bright lights and all the costuming did not go along with each other when I had a hot flash. That was terrible. But that's where she came from. And my audience is over 40. My is generally over 50. And we have live music. I started doing entertainment shows, and we had live music and comedy. And we have the music for anyone 40 and over. And we want people to be able to recognize the music when they hear it and tap their feet and have memories, So that's how we got started. And I've been doing that for 16 years.
Wow, that's a long time to be doing that. And that's some amazing stuff that you've been doing with that. So that's really great that you've been having that time and definitely doing that with some kind of regularity. So tell folks once again where you are located at, and also a little bit about the show itself. Like I said, I know it's you're going for a certain demographic, so it's just the like middle aged to old elderly demographic.
Yeah,
So how did that
I don't
come
like
about?
to consider it. It's mature adults, but it's not triple X mature. It's just mature in age. Okay. So, yes, we had live music, jazz mostly. We started out with a jokes and jazz show. And then as we were opening that up to other forms of music, pandemic started. So, but jazz, we had Rita Graham, who was a Raylette with Ray Charles. She was with me for, when I call her now, she'll come. But at the time when we were doing jokes and jazz, she was with me that whole time for about 11 years. And, then we brought on Joe Tex too. And before we could get started and rolling with that really good, we had the pandemic. And we started putting that in theaters as opposed to restaurants and lounges. And so I'm in Georgia. Smyrna is where I live, right outside of Atlanta. And yes, the pandemic is definitely here, but I'm outside of Atlanta, so I don't get to see, the some of the protesting and things of that nature. I'm extremely, extremely careful. I try to be, and for all of those people that don't want to wear masks or don't feel like they should wear masks, I mean, that's a choice that you have, but I'm wearing mine. I carry my little wand so I can sterilize things. I have to go out, and I'm constantly, washing my hands and using the sanitizer. So I don't know. Everybody seems to have a different idea of what this is about, but I prefer to be safe than sorry. To me, it's like God. I don't want to get to heaven and find out, oh my goodness, yes, there is a God. I don't want to be, buried 6 feet up under when I find out that, oh my God, that COVID was real. So that's how I handle that.
No, I agree with you. And I think that's the best attitude to have, is to have that very positive attitude about it, but to be also very realistic about it. One of the things that I tell folks is that, and it's similar to what you're just saying, it's about God. It's like, I'm not in a rush to find him or anything. I'm hoping to live many more years and everything. But, if it happens tomorrow, it happens tomorrow. But I'm not in a rush to find out. But I also think that a lot of people, when they do find out, that they might be surprised. Because I know a lot of folks that have like certain religious thoughts, and they think that it's their way or the highway. And so they write off other people's religions and other people's thought patterns and things of that nature. And I have this feeling that when they get there, they might be like, wait a minute, I didn't think any Buddhists were supposed to be up here, and be like, see all kinds of other folks running around.
Exactly. With all of the different religions around, they can't all be right.
Exactly.
They can't all be right. So, you do your best that you can. And I feel like as long as you're doing things from your heart, that's what counts. But that's just my idea. And it may not make sense to anybody, but, that's how I feel about it. I try to, I really do believe that you get what you give. Sometimes I feel like I still got a lot of stuff coming, but I'm just a karma person. That's how I feel about it.
Now, were you the one who was always doing comedy when you were like in your young years, in your 20s, or even in college or anything like that? Or did comedy come to you later? And what got you into comedy in terms of like wanting to do comedy? So what got you into comedy? And were you considered the class clown, or were you like Miss Smart Lady, or all of that?
Nope, I was none of the above. I was not the smartest person in the room. I talked like I was, but I definitely wasn't. And I think when I started doing comedy, I was 50 so I started getting out into the comedy scene. And when I did that, I found out I didn't like it, so I've heard people tell me it took them 5 years to get a job where, before they made their first paycheck. And I mean, I'm like, I'm 50. I don't have that kind of time. So then I started producing my own shows, and I just made me my business. And sometimes they would get upset because, see, then I didn't have as much time to work on my craft like they did, because that's all they did. Mm-hmm. And I presented mine as a business. So I found I had my own rooms and I started hiring comedians. And, somebody told me one time, in front of a whole bunch of comedians, that I don't understand how you got your own room when you're not even funny. Like, what's funny? How much did you make last week? So who's getting a laugh? So I look at it like my business, and I don't want anybody to tell me they're going to pay me $25, $50 to get up on stage. I make all the money, and then I pay the artist. And that made sense to me.
And I want to know, and then we'll bring Marc Jacobson in as well as the other gentlemen and everything, but what is your thoughts about that whole concept? Because I know I've got friends that are musicians and entertainers of all sorts. I actually had a magician on one of my other shows last week, and we're talking about the pay factor and how sometimes artists don't feel that they're getting the kind of pay that they should get for the craft that they get. I mean, a lot of times people will try to shortchange you, get you to do things for free and things of that nature. And that's come up in a conversation, even on the festival circuit, where people will try to get you to do stuff at a discount rate because they don't take arts as seriously as they say take a dentist or a doctor. And you definitely gonna pay your dentist or your doctor when you go to them, but are you going to pay that same kind of money for your artist and things of that nature? Sometimes we don't give enough respect to the artist. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that. And then we'll bring in Mr. Jacobson as well into our stream, because I like to have him bring in his conversation as well. So Mr. Jacobson, I just want to say hello, but we're talking to Too Cute and things of that nature. So she's a comedian out of Smyrna, Georgia. So definitely, if you'll answer that question about the pay and when you first started getting paid, because you were an artist late in life in terms of starting your art field.
Mm-hmm. I started getting paid when I did my first show. Okay. When I did my first show, I produced it, I promoted it. I was very fortunate to have people around me that helped me to promote. And I've had for 15 years, I've had a great following, and people come every month, twice a month whenever I have a show. I've been very fortunate with that. But the reason that they don't make money is because there's people like me going out to get it. You have to, and most of them, you have to ask, do you have a manager? Do you have an agent? And those people that complain about the money probably don't, or they don't have a good manager or agent.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I can play right into Mr. Jacobson and everything. Mr. Jacobson, you've had the honor of working with some amazing artists around the world. I mean, you've had the pleasure of working with just some amazing names. If you want to share some of those names, we would be honored for you to share those. But definitely tell us a little bit about that, because I know a lot of times folks don't realize the importance of having a lawyer or an agent. Too Cute, we just talked about that. She's a comedian out of Smyrna. But I know a lot of times even the big time folks don't necessarily know the importance of that. So I just wondered if you could share in your mind how important that is to get either a good lawyer or a good agent or things of that nature. I know that's part of your field, but a lot of times folks don't want to think about that. And a lot of times I think too many of our artist friends, whether they're young artists or even artists that are getting into it late in life, they know that it's called show business, but they're really good at the show part. They forget the business part. So I just wondered your thoughts on that.
Well, that's a common thing, and thanks for having me here. And Too Cute, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
So, I represented a lot of people around the world. Some of them you can't meet because they're dead, but I represented the states of George and Ira Gershwin, Duke Ellington, and Elvis Presley. So I did a lot of work for them after they passed, particularly in the music publishing area. And also I represented songwriters like Jimmy Webb, who did By the Time I Get to Phoenix and Wichita Lineman and Up and Away. And I represented James Brown for a long time, although I never met him. And I did Shakira's publishing deal, although I never met her. I did work for Fergie. So, I've done a lot of work for some very high-profile people. But to answer the second part of your question, yes, it's very important to have professionals on your side as early as you can. There are some lawyers who will work on a percentage basis like an agent does and a manager does. I'm not one of those guys. I have very good friends who do, and some of them have become very wealthy doing it because they stick with an artist all the way. It's been my experience that artists like to go to the hot new thing, the next shiny object. So my practice, although I do represent talent, as you can hear, I have done it many times, they're more of an institutional nature and they're able to carry the freight. But for a young emerging artist, it is very important to have the right advisors in your corner. There are lots of lawyers who will work for reduced rates. I work often with young talent, and I try to help them as much as I can. I'm never afraid to talk to somebody over and over and over again. It's when I have to put pen to paper and start looking at contracts that it's important to me to get paid or come to some understanding. But that's just me. There are lots of guys who work differently. The typical rate is interesting. Most lawyers charge 5%. One of my friends charges 10% of the first $500,000 of income and then drops it down because earning that first 500 is much harder than earning the second or third or fifth. Most managers charge most agents charge 10%. They're limited to 10% by statute in New York and California. I don't know the law in Tennessee. And managers in California for on-screen talent will charge 10%. Music managers will charge generally between 15 and 20%. And Elvis Presley's manager charged 50%, 50.
Wow. That's a lot for Elvis's manager. So no wonder Elvis was getting into all those kind of troubles back in those days and everything. Because I remember those stories about that manager.
Yeah, he had a lot of authority, Colonel Parker. What was interesting about him is if you think back to Elvis's career, he never played outside the U.S. except when he was in the Army in Germany. And the reason was that Colonel Parker was here illegally in the United States as an undocumented immigrant today. So if he ever left the country with Elvis, he couldn't come back. So he just told Elvis, you can't play outside the U.S.
Oh, I never knew that. So Elvis never played outside of the U.S. at all the entire time that he was living. He never played outside the United States. Wow. I never knew that.
The furthest he went was Hawaii.
The furthest was Hawaii, you said, in terms of getting out of the country on a world tour?
Wow.
That's amazing. I sure did not know that. So I learned something new myself here. I'm just wondering, how long do people's estates, are they able to go have that estate music before it goes public? Because I know a lot of times folks want to play music of, say, Elvis. And Elvis has been gone for a number of years. I remember I was actually hanging out with my grandmother at Disney World when Elvis died. Because I remember we come back from hanging out in Disney and then turned on the TV and there was all these announcements about how Elvis had passed and things of that nature.
I said, are you sure he died? I'm just kidding.
And your side job is comedian?
No competition, 2Q. No competition. Not at all.
Oh, I ain't worried.
No, the answer to your question of how long it lasts is it depends on where you live when you write the work, because the term of copyright is different in many countries. But most of the EU, the European Union, and the United States, and many of the English-speaking territories, for works that have been created recently, the term of copyright is life of the author plus 70 years. In the U.S., there's also something called termination rights. So if years ago you granted somebody rights in your songs, let's just talk about songs, and you granted them in perpetuity, under the U.S. statute, you or your heirs have a right to reclaim the U.S. rights regardless of what the statute says. So there's a big business around that, and I'm talking to some people from around the world to do that. I'm doing one for a Canadian author. I'm doing one for an Australian author. So, yeah.
And what do you think is the number one thing that folks are confused about in terms of entertainment law? Because I've got some friends that are entertainment lawyers here and things of that nature, but I know that there's got to be some misconceptions about entertainment law. So what are some of the things that you find, Mark, that are misconceptions folks have about what an entertainment lawyer can do and what entertainment law is all about?
Back in the day, I would say in the 70s, the way you got a record deal was through a lawyer pitching your stuff to an A&R executive because they had a relationship and they developed it over time. Today, the A&R executives don't need lawyers, and lawyers no longer are the gatekeepers for record deals. What happens is and people keep calling me and my friends and say, will you shop my deal? And all of us say no, because I did a deal a couple of years ago for a new hip hop artist, and it was a 7-figure deal, and they found him on SoundCloud. So what happens is the A&R executives at the labels can use the social media data to understand how many listens you're getting, how many likes you're getting, whether people are following you, and all of that. They analyze that. Of course, they listen to the music and decide if they like it. But if they do, and all those things are positive, they'll reach out directly. The lawyer comes in after the fact. So we're no longer the gatekeepers.
Well, that's different.
That's something I preach all the time, because my interest in the entertainment world was the artist, and they don't do exactly what you're saying. They don't understand that is true, exactly what you're saying. And I can't wait to say, I've been on a podcast with Mark Jacobson, and he affirms that this is true. They look at what you do on social media. It's very, very important.
Well, they see it as a proxy for whether or not you can put butts in seats.
Exactly.
That's all they care about. So
I want to bring Jamie in, because Jamie's actually got a product, and I know he's interested in some of this legal conversation as well, because he's got a product where he's trying to get folks to actually have more access to their rights and their ways of putting things out. I'm probably not describing it in the best way, Jamie. So describe what your product is and what you've got going on, because I know that you're trying to give the voice to the musicians and to some of the others. So Jamie, share with us what you've got going on.
Well, I'm not sure that I actually had the idea or if the idea had me. It's one of the few times in my life I've had a 5-minute conversation with myself alone, just convincing myself, could this possibly be, And what I came across was somewhat of a mental disconnect in the music industry as far as the manufacturers go, who came out with all the different forms of media and the players that we use to listen to them. So I think this is why it never dawned on people to create it. But what I noticed was the price of MP3 players just tanking. And then, just because of, oversaturation in the market, number one. But when the smartphone came out, and, there's 2.7 billion smartphone users today. So, the MP3 players are kind of obsolete. But, so the prices are even lower, in a bulk rate. And so what I realized was that 1/8-inch jack, 3.5 millimeter jack, that is an output lying out, like in the Sony Walkman. That's the first time I had it, and the paths that were created to replicate music and for your own enjoyment. I mean, right down to listening to the radio and hitting play and record on your boombox. You know what I mean? So the industry was fully aware of some of the piracy going on, but since the beginning of time, there's always been a media and a media player. And so when I realized that we could feasibly come out with the same technology of a nano MP3 player, and if for every album, release, I just couldn't believe it, So the only thing that really stood in my way was the audio out jacks, and then all of the equipment on the earth that provides a path for reproduction. So when I got my first, my next phone here, I noticed it didn't have any output jack on it. And I saw some other phones coming out that way. I went to the store and saw some of the laptops. I was going to pick up a laptop, and none of them have the mic line in. And here I'd been recording on my old recorder and then trying to upload into my computer that way and then make a video and shoot it out onto YouTube or something. And I didn't have that ability to do it with the laptops on the market. And you'll have to excuse me because I don't have a pitch together for this necessarily. I haven't really talked about it to people. But so what I ended up arriving at is that if I could come up with an MP3 player that had the brains to decipher which components and systems to pair with, and be able to selectively pair with only headphones, or a car stereo, or some other devices out there, Bluetooth speakers that don't provide this path, that I was onto something. So that's when I started working with some of the Bluetooth engineers and decided to go ahead and create this patent. And so, the reason that it works is because manufacturers who make their devices, if they're going to work within a Bluetooth platform, they have to register the frequencies and the identification numbers of the product that they're making. This allows us to approach a company like Logitech. Prime example of someone who might make some earbuds. They might make some standalone Bluetooth speakers. But lo and behold, they also make a Bluetooth adapter that will just take my signal and turn it into a female out that you can plug in a cord and go straight into your computer, and there you go. So it gives us the leverage to say to them, hey, give us all your numbers. I mean, they're public knowledge, but there's other identifiers that we can use as well to make it an easier process of pairing and filtering out the items we don't want to pair with. So, they can companies can work with us and give us the information we need to pair with their products that are posing no threat to piracy or for piracy, and then we can filter out the ones that do, and they can still go ahead and sell those products. It's just that it's not going to work with ours. And I've reached out to Beats. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I thought, they're a perfect company to come out with something that would, pair with their products and maybe set the industry trend that people would follow. One of the big hurdles that we're up against here is the management and the industry trend towards digital markets and now, virtual reality coming down the pike. And what I found over the course of 2 years is that I could hardly find an artist who wouldn't get excited about this. They're all just, they're all behind it 100%. And when I thought of the idea, I was so excited, and I couldn't believe it myself. I was, wanting to go to the rooftops and shout it off, thinking the whole world would just embrace me with "Where you been all our life," And what I found was just the opposite. So. One of the first people I talked to happened to be a lawyer that helped Madonna or worked with Madonna on her 360 deal. And so through this conversation, he ended up asking me, why would anybody want to carry around 20 different things when they got 20,000 at their fingertips? And I wasn't prepared for this conversation. I was prepared for the conversation of, yes, this is awesome, So to have that thrown in my face right off the bat, I was like, who cares? Who cares what you want? Nobody has a right to anybody else's works for free, and that's just the facts of the matter. I don't care what kind of generations have gone past already thinking they have a right to free music. They don't. And so, and then, it would be a different story. Like Madonna's lawyer said, where were you 12, 15 years ago? The trend is the digital markets, and there's people who have invested so heavily into them that they don't really want to go back into physical goods. Even one of the upper management execs at Warner flat out said that they probably wouldn't be interested in going back into physical goods. They're really going into this virtual reality thing. And he said, imagine,
Hey, Jamie, if I could just interrupt you really quick.
Sure,
I appreciate the conversation, but I want to come back to Mark because he actually raises an interesting question, which is that we've gone from the physical platform, and like I said, you're the lawyer in the house and everything, and to the more digital world. And a lot of times you do have access to those things. I know even on some shows that I've been part of, you can grab something from YouTube, and yeah, they'll send you the lovely YouTube warning, but I don't know how much enforcement they really do. They just send you the lovely warning about the fact that you used a YouTube track or this track or that track. So because of the flexibility of digital stuff and things of that nature, what do you tell folks about that? Because there is that whole concept of what's going on digitally and having greater access. I think that's what Jamie's referring to. And it's harder to track. It's harder to actually stop people from doing things along those lines.
Not sure I understand your question, but what we find is once you release something on the internet, it is copied both lawfully and unlawfully, and you have to assume that that's going to happen. Even if you're a beginning artist, let's just call it that, and right. You have a record on, and you've released it on Spotify and Apple and whatever, and the dollar amount that you get paid for each play is extremely low. It's thousandths of a cent. And so that's why Madonna had a 360 deal, because the record companies have recognized that the value isn't just in the record anymore. The record deal is the engine that pulls the train, and so without a record deal, it's very hard to get seen. But publishing and touring pre-COVID and merchandise is where revenue comes from. The streaming business or the live concert business is booming, and that's where a lot of people are moving towards so that they can make some money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I'm just curious about that. And also, all of you, and I think Too Cute had a question or a thought on that as well, but all of you, where do you think the music business and the entertainment business is going in general? I've got friends of mine, they're talking about the fact that Broadway was shut down pretty much all of this year, so it's not happening Broadway at all. I've heard people even speculating that 2021 might be kind of in question as to whether we'll get live concerts or things of that nature. And we are seeing more and more people doing streaming shows. And what are some of those rights, this is more for you, Mark, that people will have in those streaming shows versus some of the other things that they might be doing? So I'm just curious where y'all think entertainment is going. Like I said, I'm a big fan. I've actually done some event planning, so I'm a big fan of outside concerts, big fan of concerts in venues. I'm actually on the board of the Carolina Theater here in Durham, and I've also worked with the Hayti Heritage Center and a number of other places that are cultural arts centers, and all of them pretty much are shut down right now. I mean, they may be getting ready to do some virtual things and some other things to stay involved and to stay engaged in the public, but for the most part, they're shut down. I mean, I do know that I think the country music scene and a couple of others are starting to do what I call drive-in concerts. So I know that there's that kind of push where, it might be folks coming in because you can have that separation that the CDC wants folks to have. So I was just wondering what y'all's thoughts are in terms of where entertainment is in this new era, the era that we're in because of COVID, and where do you think we're heading, and when will we see relief in y'all's minds?
Well, for me, I can tell you I had a client who finished a film late last year, and they wanted to get it released, and they had a lot of interest from distributors, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and so they had what we call a virtual theatrical release, and it did very well, and now it's going to go through the rest of the channels of DVD and educational. So the virtual release, the virtual concert, there is a move by some very sophisticated people to create avatars for people to come watch an artist perform as an avatar, and then have you attend as an avatar, and you can dance and do all that kind of stuff. So that's where a lot of technology is going in that sense. But I think that once COVID is controlled, you're going to see live concerts, you're going to see Broadway, you're going to see movie theaters opening up again, because since man became able to draw on caves, he's been telling stories in the dark. So it's not going to change.
Well, I'm glad to hear that it won't change and things of that nature. I'm not sure how I feel about the avatars, because I was watching one of the NBA games, and I saw the people watching from their TVs at home, those limited ones that were able to get seating and things of that nature. And it just didn't have the same kind of appeal as watching it on a even a regular game, watching the fans engage, whether that's some of the celebrities we know like Billy Crystal and others, or just folks really engage in the activity that are real people versus an avatar. So, and in baseball, we won't even talk about that because that's like cutout figures. And that really doesn't do anything for me in terms of watching those. So, 2Q, you had a question that you were getting ready to ask or a thought?
No, I just wanted to make a comment off of what Mark was saying when you were talking about YouTube and how do they police it. Well, I make all of my own commercials on YouTube and all of my own promotions and what have you. And because of the artists, I deal with so many artists, I use their music. So when I have an artist's music on, I'm contacted by YouTube to let me know that they've taken my video down, and now I have to let them know that I have permission from the artist to use that. Now, I don't know what happens in between or on the backside, but the artist has to kind of police that themselves. And I'm not exactly sure how they do that. But so here again, you have to be represented by someone that understands those kind of things so that people aren't, stealing your music.
There's something, YouTube has something called Content ID.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a major lawsuit pending about it right now because by the way they work it, only if you are a big publisher or a big record company are you eligible for Content ID. And then what they do is they give you a choice. You can either you can cause a video which uses your music to come down, or you can monetize it so that YouTube can put ads against it. But that only applies to those who are eligible for Content ID. The challenge is there are many people who are not eligible for Content ID, and therefore their material isn't policed. And so there's a lawsuit suggesting that YouTube is attempting to change the law by creating Content ID and only serving the big people. It's insanely complicated. I actually was working at Prodigy, an old online service in the late 1990s. And I was one of the people that drafted the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. I testified before Congress on it and had a big hand in doing that. And what we didn't anticipate is the phony counter notices that come about. So if I represent a publisher and I see someone is infringing my client's work, I send a notice and takedown to YouTube. It comes down, and then the user who has infringed my client's copyright sends back a phony counter notice that says, oh no, Jacobson's client doesn't own it, I do, and YouTube then puts it back up, and it is impossible for my client to take it down without filing a full-blown lawsuit.
Wow. And that's, and you kid, I hope you come back, but that is kind of what I was referring to, because that's what happened is that we would have like an independent artist or an artist that had actually given permission to put their music onto the show. They might have even been the actual artists themselves then performing the music, and then or tell us to go put their YouTube site on, and then YouTube would come back and be like, you violated it because we actually own the right to what's going on. So I'm glad to know that that's going on, that suit is taking place, because that's where I was finding it. Not so much that you're grabbing, like, say, a Madonna or a Prince or somebody like that video. I can understand that, but you're grabbing somebody that is, one, an independent artist, and two, they are trying to get their artwork out there. They're trying to actually show their artwork, and you're not like trying to grab a national artist of any sort, whether it's jazz or blues or whatever. These are artists that have given you permission.
Yep. It's tough.
Yeah, and and I know that happens a lot. What are some of the other issues that you found as a lawyer that folks need to be aware of? Or even like maybe our comedian friend, like I said, she's definitely done a lot in the field and has done, as best I can tell, what she's supposed to do. But I do find a lot of folks that are not aware of what they should be doing. So what are some things that you would automatically ask an artist to know from a legal perspective before they even start doing shows or being involved?
You're asking me or 2Q?
Yeah, Mr. Jacobson.
Well, I'd want to make sure that if it's a songwriter, I think it's very important that they register their songs at one of the performing rights societies correctly, that they have what we call split sheets. So if the four of us work together on a song, we might split the song equally, or Mark, you might get 50% of the song and we might split the rest equally, or something like that. But signing a sheet like that makes it entirely appropriate for everyone. Plus, at the performing rights societies, there are two sets of income. There's the writer's share and the publisher's share, and you have to register for both to get both. Lots of people just register their writer's share and don't register the publisher's share, which means they're leaving 50% of the money on the table. Also, registering at BMI or ASCAP is not the end. It's only the beginning. I can get really technical, but performance is only one part of the publishing income. On recordings, it's very much the same way. You have to make sure everyone who works on your recording has signed a contract. And if you're the artist, you own the rights. I can't tell you how many times artists have hired me and said the studio won't give me my tracks, and I paid them. And then the studio extorts a pretty high fee for letting them go. It's routine for that to happen. You have to be careful going in. People's creative work is important to them. It's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard. Mark was sharing with us about his experience with Elvis, and he was joking that we know that Elvis is dead or not, and I'm not 100% sure. But what are some of share some of the experiences that you had in the industry, and just some that you might want to share just in terms of being involved in there, and just share with us some of your personal experiences in the industry. Like I said, you started late for one thing. You decided that you wanted to become a comedian when you were in that 40, 50 age
50.
range. So
yeah, I was 50. I was already 50. Matter of fact, I think I had been 52 weeks the first time I went on stage. And I had performed my first show. That was the first show I produced. And like Mark was saying, you have to be very careful. There was a lot I didn't know. So I had to learn. And I became a sponge when it came to what I was responsible for, what I was liable for. I worked in restaurants and lounges because they already had insurance, and working with the different artists, trying to maintain their writers and making sure that when I went into a place that there was, the insurance that was necessary, so it was a learning experience. And that was not, something that I went to school for. That was not something that, I'd even thought about doing, lasting this long, actually. So, but it became a part of me, and I was interested after meeting so many artists that just think that all I have to do is write a good song and play it well, and I should make money, and you should pay me a lot of money. I'm like, look, I would not hire Janet Jackson if she wasn't putting butts in seats. You have to understand that. I mean, it's important that every time I would go to someone to let them know that I wanted to do a show here, they already heard of me. They already know that I'm bringing a crowd. So it was just when. Not if you could, if you would, when. And they don't understand the importance of that. And when I would hire an artist, I hired an artist because I'd already been to their shows, or I'd looked at their social media to see who's following them and how they promote themselves. So that's important. That was important for me. And then along with that comes the learning experience, but you have to pick up everything you can and read it and talk to people, to make it happen so that you could do it intelligently.
Gotcha. And what surprised you most about the comedy field? Like I said, I've got some friends that are comedians, some that are current comedians, and some that are have been in the field before. One of my good friends is actually the producer of This Christmas. So Ronnie Warner and me have known each other for a number of years, and many people remember that Christmas classic that came out a few years ago. But what are some of the things that have surprised you about the comedy field as it is now?
Oh, as it is now, I think that you have to have goals. And you have to know what you want to do. And everybody can't be Kevin Hart. Everybody, can't. So you have to make what you want out of it. Make it yours. That's what I do. I make it mine. I went to the restaurant the other night and I was like, hey, they're letting people in here. Well, I need some time because I haven't been on stage for a while. And I normally do Vegas this time of year. And so I said, well, they never heard of me. I said, well, I'm a comic and you want me here. And I think he thought I was crazy. He said, honey, we got an open mic night. I was like, okay, all right. And then I sent him a video. And he watched that video while I was eating. And he came back and he said, you don't have to worry about coming here for no open mic. We're going to put you on our calendar. I said, okay, thank you. That works. I like that. So, I mean, you just have to be ballsy, so to speak, and you have to know what you want and go after it. And don't expect that every time you talk to somebody, they're going to do what you want. That's not going to happen. It's like any sales. You get a few no's and then you get a yes. I get very few no's.
It makes a lot of sense. So, Mr. Jacobson, what's the craziest thing that you've had happen to you in terms of like somebody trying to approach you and wanting to get some advice? Because I know I've got a friend of mine who's a business owner in Dubai, and he talked about how he had somebody that wanted him to invest. He's got that kind of money that he can invest in things of that nature. And, I think the first thing he asked him was, did they have a business plan? And this person was a family member. They didn't have a business plan, so he automatically wrote them off because he's like, you're not even trying to be serious about what you're doing. So I'm just curious, what are some of the craziest things that you've heard? Because I imagine as a lawyer, and you've been in this game for a while, that you've probably run across some very interesting stories.
I represented a guy who got a book published based on his claim that he can actually move tissue in your skin without touching you. So he can give people nose jobs by just staring at them.
Okay.
Story. There's another guy who came to me who claimed that his little 3-minute video was the inspiration for a chorus line. And he showed it to me, and I showed it to my wife, and we had both seen the show, and it was, what planet is this guy on? I mean, they're so far removed, and the copyright infringement claims are the ones that are the most bizarre. People claim that whatever they did, whatever somebody did successfully was infringed. One of my friends keeps telling me, where there's a hit, there's a writ. So,
yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And I want to hear both of you, well, everybody, how, because I remember there was a time that piracy was a big complaint around the industry, particularly around music. I imagine around comedy as well. I mean, I haven't heard as much lately, so I'm thinking that we must have kind of put some rules into effect. But it seems that that's kind of what Jamie's product is trying to do, is that he's still seeing some folks that are doing this kind of piracy stuff. So how much of an issue is piracy of music and piracy of content, and with something like Jamie's product help alleviate it? So what are your thoughts on that? Because it definitely, I'm just not kind of trying to get a feel as to whether it's still a major issue. Because I remember that definitely early on in the age of the internet, we heard all kinds of talks about it. And of course, it came up even in congressional hearings.
Well, I'll let Jamie answer that.
Wonderful. Well, there's still very much alive today, this music piracy. So, at $12.7 billion, and now it's down to like half that, as far as the revenue. And so, on a global scale, nobody knows. I mean, it's in the trillions. So, there has been efforts made online, to stop the ripping. And, as you might have heard in some of the hearings and some of the stuff that's going on recently, there's methods and tactics that could be used and have been there for years, and they're not using them. You know what I mean? So I think some legislation might be in order, that requires them to do some of these things. My product doesn't seek to kill digital markets. Okay. People enjoy having these things at their fingertips, and I'm not here to take that away. What I'm here to do is to give artists a choice and to create leverage for them in these digital markets. Okay. So, if Ted Nugent, who I love dearly, were to walk in and demand more money in digital markets for his new album coming out, I'm not sure how much, leverage he'd have even with my product. But if Bruno Mars walks in the door and says, I'm not going to give you all even one song if you don't give me the price I want, right? Now he's got something. So right now, artists got nothing. They got a CD that anybody can rip. There's no protection at all. I myself am seeking legislation, and I've already reached out to the Trump administration, my local state representatives, not to pass legislation that requires you buy my product, but legislation that says, hey, you have to use whatever technology is available out there, to protect your client. And you don't have to use this technology, but you have to have something at least as equally effective. You know what I mean? And so for a label or a man, anybody to contract an artist and take on the responsibility of protecting their music, representing their music and their livelihood, to me, owes it to that artist to protect his music in any way necessary. Otherwise, it's a crime. So, I got a buddy who got on board with this right away. His name's James Boggs, and I don't have all his stuff memorized, but I'll tell you, this is what he told me today. He's got 300 songs on YouTube. And over the course of the years, he had his own label with a bunch of bands underneath him. And, he decided to release 2 of the albums to digital markets. And after tracking those 2 releases, he had 2 million downloads over the course of 15 years. And he's gotten $2,000. And so, he's saying that the money's not there for the artists. And so, deals like the 360 deal where, Madonna could be playing in Brazil, and if you're in France or in America or wherever you are around the world and you got the VR headset, you can attend her concert. And when you're there, they've got cameras, that you can look all around you, and it's not shadow people, it's the real people there. And you can spend money, to just be up in the nosebleeds, or you can be right on stage with your favorite artist and all the pricing of the tickets in between. So that's going to open up the door to huge revenues. But, the whole reason I even came across this idea I had was because after my music career neared its end at 30, I realized I was getting pretty old, and if I hadn't gotten some traction by now, it might not happen. I started focusing on my son and got him the recording equipment I never had and the gear that I never had, and tried to get him in the position to make a demo. And he's a very talented young man. So after some months went by, and I'm saying, well, where are my results here? I want 3 songs. He comes over and he plays me some stuff, and here I see that it's on YouTube. So here he is already putting his music out there, uncopywritten, and unprotected. And I called him on it, I guess I had the investment into the thing. I'm like, what are you doing, And he says, Pops, get with the times, man. Nobody makes money off of music anymore. It's all done off of live, performances and merch. And, he left. I was devastated. I sat there wondering, how in the hell did we get to this? Where an artist doesn't even care to protect his music because he knows it's just no point anyway. Well, I think that, that's a bit extreme, and I'm sure there's plenty of artists out there who still go through the motions of protecting their works before they release it.
Yeah, I want to hear from Mr. Jacobson, because one of the things I remember is part of the reason that Prince went with that whole symbol thing was because he was running into some of these same issues, and that was. Now,
I'll interrupt here about the Prince thing. Just last week or so, I saw that there was a blurb about how the Prince estate was considering releasing his entire catalog to TikTok. And I personally wrote them a message saying, stop, that, we'll be coming out with this device within a year or 2 that will protect all of his music, don't do this. And then shortly after, this whole banning thing by India, and I'm not sure whether it's going to follow through here in the States or not as far as banning TikTok. But, I just urge anybody who's, given up feel hopeless about their music, they need to get on board with this, and it's a grassroots movement. The only people that want it are really truly the artists themselves. So, but the Prince thing definitely alarmed me, and I was like, whoa, I'm not sure he would like that very much.
So, Mr. Jacobson, I was asking you about the Prince thing, and also just about, I remember that was a big issue, and part of the reason that he did kind of like switch to the symbol and everything was because he was feeling that the music industry was taking advantage of him. So he wanted to kind of put his own music out there under his control. So are you finding more and more artists that are wanting to do that are the big artists?
No. If you look at the Billboard charts, the top 200 songs or albums or what have you, the vast majority of them have been released by the major record labels. There are a few exceptions. There are always exceptions. For a long time, I was a manager, and we believed in self-releasing. The challenge with that back in the day when I used to do that is we estimated the cost of getting to a number one album through streaming and all that was between $500,000 and $1 million. Most artists don't have that money. If they do, they've raised it from somebody else, and so then there's a sharing of the revenue with that company, and so it gets very, very complicated. The challenge is in securing plays and recognition. It goes back to what Too Cute and I were talking about before. If you put butts in the seats in the beginning, you're well on your way. And that's how people are found. You got to play out in the clubs. You got to be found. You got to be exposed that way. I think that, Jamie, while I appreciate all that you're saying about protecting the works, because that's how I make my living, I sort of feel like you're Mickey Mouse in the Fantasia, where the water keeps coming and he's trying to get out by a bucket at a time. It's impossible. Yes, songs are released on YouTube. Yes, you can copyright them afterwards. Yes, you can register on BMI afterwards. And yes, you can make money from it. It's just that the consumer has driven this industry away from the purchase and owning of records and tracks and downloads. The iPod is gone to the point where everything is available in the cloud, and it's an access business, not an ownership business. And once that model is accepted, it will start to be more clear how one makes money.
Yeah, because along those same lines, I was just thinking about the fact that my laptop, and I'm sitting here on my laptop right now, it does not have the CD player on it. And I know a lot of the computers don't anymore, and a lot of the other things are not there that used to be there, because I think that even Jamie alluded to some of the things that are gone now. But I remember usually one of my older laptops, literally, you could pop the button, put a CD in, and have a good old time with it. Now you've got to get an external version of that if you want to have it connected to your computer. So it's not part of the computer anymore. And a lot of those other things, like the iPod, I own one of those and may be laying around the apartment somewhere, but I know a lot of folks don't have those anymore. So it seems to have gone the way of
they no longer support them either. And you can't buy a track. You can't download a track anymore. So you can't actually own the track.
Right, you can't own the track at all. So even if you had the iPod, it wouldn't do you any good because you can't own that track whatsoever unless you. And so it's just like a novelty item. It's a good novelty item if you want to collect novelty items, but it doesn't really have a strong purpose anymore.
Exactly. So in response to Mark's suggestion of being Mickey Mouse and Fantasia, it's still a real problem. And, I just learned today that, out of if you have a top 40 song on the charts, this peer-to-peer sites that have evolved now, instead of like one person uploading it to the site, BitTorrent or, Napster or something like that, and then another person downloading it, now they can just send it direct to each other peer-to-peer. Current stats are around 8,000 shares a week. And that's money lost. You know what I mean? Dark Side of the Moon was downloaded 187,000 times in June alone. And so, to me, what in a perfect world, artists would come out on a medium that's protected, unlike the CD and anything else. So I don't care if it's mine. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's something that can fit in your shirt pocket or weighs 14 pounds. Okay, the world's not going to go on without new music. So I don't care if people want to carry stuff around or don't. It's not their choice. It's up to the artist. And so in a perfect world, the artist would have the protection to release their music out on this device and then release 1 to 3 songs, just like they always have, to radio and digital markets. So that's why I'm saying it's not really a threat to digital markets as far as their livelihood, because the people who don't want to buy a full album and they just like the 3 songs, they'll be happy to download, and there'll be nothing changed. But what needs to take place is the artist having the option to not go to the digital markets and be able to leverage a better price, and then release the rest of the songs off that album over the course of a year or 2 until the next one comes out. It makes perfect sense to me, at least, that they should have some control over the sale and distribution of their product in order to maintain its market value and leverage in areas like those digital markets. And so that's kind of the whole thing. And in the end, lately I've been considering about offering this up to the artists themselves. So creating some type of public organization that houses the IP and so that it's not this kind of power isn't held by just one organization or company. I'm wondering about a public offering on this, so I'm going to research into that. But overall, the other benefit of this thing is that it offers a better sound quality, because we're not going to use up all of the memory space for 500 songs. We can offer a better file format with a lossless file. And maybe the average ear might not be able to tell much of a difference, but, the good trained ears out there who enjoy music will definitely be able to tell the difference. It's the closest thing to analog you can get in a digital form. And plus it works in a cave, right? Bad weather, big apartment buildings, in the basement. It works. It works as long as it's got power. So that's the other benefit. It's not going to kill digital markets. It's just going to give the artists the protection they deserve. And plus, vinyl's made a huge comeback, right? And I think some of it is the sound quality, obviously. But I think, even with CDs, tapes, records, you remember, it's the physical, it's the smell of the album when you open it up. It's the, all the artwork and the stuff. And so I'd like to have, I think that comes into play a little bit as well. They look like little mini albums with the front and the back. But at any rate, I digress. I think that
no problem. But I did have another quick question for both of you,
Sure.
and actually, too cute if you want to jump in as well. And that was the whole concept of, and you kind of alluded to it, Mr. Jacobson. But that's the whole concept of, for a number of years, the music industry, and I've been in radio. I've worked mostly in nonprofit radio, but I've also worked in community radio and things of that nature. And I've got friends that work in commercial radio, and for the most part, that's pretty much run by 3 or 4 institutions. I mean, you can talk the Clear Channels, you can talk the other kind of Radio One and things of that nature. And the same with the concerts, like Live Nation is a major player. There might be 1 or 2 other players. Do you think that at some point we're going to see a breakup of that kind of like entertainment industry? Because right now it's being controlled by like 3 or 4 major institutions. Like, I can guarantee you that if I turn my radio on right now to the R&B station, I'm probably going to hear roughly at the same time the same music that Too Cute is hearing in Smyrna, Georgia, because they pretty much are programming the same music the same way throughout the country. It's very monolithic in that sense. So I was just wondering, do you think that there will be a time that we will see any kind of breakup the way that we did of Ma Bell and some of the other kind of bigger corporations that did eventually get broken up?
No idea. I think it has a lot to do with who wins the election in November. You're watching the Democrats and Republicans take on big tech, Facebook and Apple and Google. I refuse as much as possible to use Google product because for many years I thought they were, and they still are, copyright thieves. And that's been my opinion for a long time. Apple doesn't do it the same way. But I can't answer the question as to whether it's going to get broken up because I just don't know.
Okay. But I do know that's something that a lot of folks, even independent musicians, because I got friends that are independent musicians, and that's where they get frustrated because they would like to be able to have their music heard, and they're not finding places that they can have their music heard at, unfortunately, because oftentimes they're going for the bigger artists. And I understand that you want to have the bigger artists, and the bigger artists are going to get played on the bigger.
I'm sorry. You have to think about the business model for a radio station, right? But the way they make money is to sell advertising. People, by and large, will listen to songs they've heard before from Beyonce and from whoever it is, Pink Floyd. Doesn't matter. They're going to want to listen to those songs. The more listeners you get, the greater you can charge. The more money you can charge for ads. But if it's you can have a show, one show a day, or at a particular hour of new and emerging artists. Excuse me, but that revenue is not going to match the artist in the morning drive time who plays all the top 40 hits. It's just that's how the business is driven. It's hard to understand that. On an antitrust level, I'm not so sure that a product which is entirely free, which is radio, has an ability to be subject to antitrust because the consumer choice is still there. You don't have to listen to the radio.
Yeah, and I guess where I go is and I'm saying all of them, and I mentioned them earlier, so I'll mention them again. But I do know that in some cases, and maybe not so much the radio, but excuse me, Live Nation controls both the venue and the artist oftentimes. So that's where I wonder sometimes about like antitrust, particularly with them, because sometimes they control both the venue because they own it or have access to a number of the venues here in Durham where I am, and even other bigger cities like Atlanta and New York. And then, of course, they also oftentimes are the controlling factor in the artist as well. So maybe they don't control the radio, but they definitely control some of the other mediums that exist within the entertainment industry, and they're controlling it on multiple ends. So that's why I was wondering, it's not about the antitrust.
That's an issue for them. They have maybe a dozen artists who are under 360 deals. My law firm at the time did them. I helped out on a couple of those deals. They're very, very big deals. They paid an awful lot of money for that. That is an antitrust consideration. It's not so. I don't see it in radio. I do see it for Live Nation. I don't see it for AEG. On the other hand, Live Nation has been hurt really bad by the coronavirus. They had to take out a $600 million loan. They laid off thousands of people around the world. It's, I don't know that they're going to be subject to that scrutiny going forward. None of these live performance folks will. I mean, people talk about the Nederlanders and the Schuberts in New York and the theater industry as being antitrust violations, but it seems to work. I mean, the price for a Broadway ticket is astronomical compared to what it was 10 years ago. And I'm not counting Hamilton.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting. For all of you, how are y'all dealing with, switch the topic just a little bit, but how are everybody dealing with the virus and their own kind of confinement? Are you doing actual work, Mr. Jacobson, where you're actually going into the office? Because I know a number of folks were doing it just strictly from their home. I'm friends with Sri, and I know Sri was pretty much just doing a lot of stuff in his, he's a digital media pioneer. He was doing a lot of stuff from his house, and then he went off and got a chance to have a little bit of vacation time and get out. So he's starting to move around a little bit in New York, but there are still a lot of confines that people are having work-wise.
I left a 2,000 lawyer law firm in 2010. I bounced around in a bunch of offices and rented space. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I figured out that I didn't need an office. So I've been working at home well before the virus came in. So it doesn't matter to me.
Makes a lot of sense.
Up 30% since the coronavirus is this whole being quarantined at home or whatever. So I've been, busy trying to spread the word here. I appreciate any help that's out there. I can't say that I'm convinced myself. I'd like to be. I know early on, I again experienced a trend in the market that wasn't embracing it, other than artists. And so, the jury's still out in a sense. I followed through with the patent expenses because the heart of that technology could be used in other sectors, of industry. So it's not just this device. that I needed to protect. But there has to be, someone has to demonstrate a need for this, and I guess that's why I'm here, and I'm gonna continue onward trying to find out, what the public opinion is on this. But the artists, to me, are the ones that really matter, as far as, if I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, and there really isn't the need for this, then we need to come to that understanding. I haven't seen it yet. To me, again, I feel it should be a harmonious relationship between digital markets and whatever they come out on, the whole release. So that's the direction I'm going, and I thank you guys for hearing me out.
No problem at all.
First thing I've ever done in the way of trying to promote it. So, hopefully I can get a public speaker.
You did a good job and everything. Maybe Too Cute can be your ambassador. Too Cute, what have you been thinking about this whole thing, just the world that we're in and everything in terms of material? Because I'm thinking that most of the comedians I know are having all kinds of great material just because the world is giving them material, whether it's about the virus itself or certain political figures or things of that nature. So how often do you touch on topical subjects, and are you finding it is giving you more and more material?
I throw it in because when you have something like this, every comedian has something to say about it, and it just becomes redundant. So I have to come up with something new. I get my material from my audience and from life experience. And even though I am having life experience with this pandemic, I find it, too redundant because every comedian is doing it. And but I've spent my time trying to figure out my business and how I can continue. I do believe that we're going to have issues next year, but I need to make some money. And during the course of that, it's like, without getting away from the entertainment industry, what can I do now? So that, because I'm dead in the water when it comes to events. I can't do live events anymore. So I've been spending my time, and I've become an Amazon influencer, and I've picked up a couple of people to do some marketing for them. And I kind of like that, I'm trying to even make that funny, with the videos that I'm putting together now for their products. And I have my own Amazon store where, my genre is over 40. And so I'm putting together products that they can come to my store and know that the products there are for people that, are geared towards people that are over 40. So that's what I've been doing. And I love the process of doing something different, but being the same, so to speak.
Gotcha. So I won't put you on the spot because you've been giving us some good humor and everything, but I want to hear a couple of your jokes and everything. I think Mr. Jacobson would as well, and Jamie. So he'll go give you a chance to put you on the spot.
Hold on a second. Didn't we have a conversation in the begining of this about how people ask comedians and artists to work for free? I would never ask her to do that.
But I can tell you, if you go to toocute.net, NETTUKUTE.net, you got some stuff out there that can make you smile. So I need you to get to my website anyway, that I'm still putting together, by the way, as I'm, being in business and developing my business as a new way to try to keep everything flowing, so to speak. The marketing I'm still working on, but it's coming together. I'm excited about it. I am funny, when I go out to the airport, which I'm not doing anymore. I go out to the airport, everybody want to talk to me. I think I have that kind of face. People think I'm friendly, that I want to talk to them. So they want to tell me about Jesus. So I pull out my Bible. And when I pull out my Bible, they just keep going. They leave me alone. And then there's a few that, I want to talk about Jesus to you. I start speaking in tongues. That gets rid of them real quick.
I would get rid of them every time.
So See, I slipped one in for you.
You slipped one in there. That was a good one. I appreciate that. I imagine that Mr. Jacobs runs into that same thing. Everybody runs into a lawyer. They automatically want advice. So I think that anytime you go to a dinner party, you've got tons of folks that are coming to you. You've got this product or that product, this thing or that thing, and they want you to give them that free legal advice when they know good and well that you got to pay a certain amount when you come to the office. But I'm imagining they probably call you all the time at the dinner party. And back when we were going to bars, they probably stopped you and your wife in the bars and the restaurants and were like, wanted to tell you this or that.
Yes,
it's worth what you pay for it. So.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. But however, because having been in business being in business for myself for several years now, the one thing that I do know is that there's like tons and tons and tons of people telling you how you should run your business. And this is the best way to do it. This is the best way to market it. And they want to sell you something. They all want to sell you something. I get that. I really do get that. But if you're trying and you're starting out, you don't always have the money to try out everything to find out what doesn't work, what works for you. So I'm putting together a small group of people that I'm working with to, I'm footing it, the advertisement. And if they're willing to put in the work, I'm willing to put in, some funds to try to make this happen so that they could market their business and try to get themselves, up and running, so to speak, and to learn about marketing and to learn what works for them, because the same thing for your business might not work for mine.
Exactly. So just tell folks too, Kid, really quickly, what the business did you have and what were you doing work-wise before you became a comedian? Like you said, you became a comedian at 50. So what was the work field before you got involved in comedy?
For years and years and years and years. I worked in corporate technology and several facets. I was a trainer and I wrote training materials. I sold. And in technology, that was it. I worked, as a matter of fact, I'm in this guy's house right now, who was a shareholder in a business that I started working in over about 30 years ago. And he had an accident, and he is now a quadriplegic. And I've been, working with him ever since. He's been a quad for 22 years. So on and off for 22 years, I've worked with him and I've gained, I can't tell you, an infinite amount of knowledge when it comes to, we were talking about having a business plan and, I was his business analyst for a while. And so they would have to come through me. The projects would come through me before I sent it to him because I knew what he was going to look for and I knew what he was going to ask if they didn't have. So that worked out for me, so I'm 66 and I always forget what I'm talking about.
No, that's right. You tell us a little bit about your background. And I wanted Mr. Jacobson to share a little bit about his as well. So what got you involved in law in general? And then more specifically, what got you involved in entertainment law? Were you always wanted to be an entertainment lawyer, or was this something that you wanted to do when you were back in teen years, or it became something you became involved in later in life?
One of my, when I was a kid, my uncle, my mother's sister's husband, my uncle, was a very prominent lawyer in Jersey City. And when he passed away, there was a funeral procession that was over a mile long. Plus, when we would go to his house for Passover dinner, there were judges and other lawyers, and everybody was laughing and having a grand old time. And I thought that was cool, so I wanted to be a lawyer. And then when I went to law school and I heard about copyright and that I could make money watching TV, reading books, going to plays and movies and things like that, I said that's what I wanted to do. And I've been chasing that since I graduated law school in 78. In the beginning of this, I talked about some of my clients. I still represent lots of prominent clients, but they've moved more towards technology-oriented people and the unusual users of music. I represent the cheer industry, cheerleading, and they have had a difficult time with music over the years, and we've kind of straightened that out for them. I wanted to talk about a business plan notion, though. I know how important it is for most businesses when you have a unique selling proposition and you need to set that out. But when my clients come to me with a film and they come to me with a business plan for that film, I don't read it because every film has the same goal, and that is to be theatrically released with as much attention as possible, and then sold to the premium cable networks, and then sold to the streamers, and then sold to free TV, and possibly on DVD in every territory in the world. So I think for films that a business plan makes no sense. And I urge my clients not to do it, because invariably they add in the back of the plan, here are some comps for other movies, and they never list the movies that are flops. They only list the enormously successful movies, which unfortunately is misleading when you think about securities law. So I'd rather they not do it. And that's my view on business plans for films. It's not true for a product like Jamie's or any other thing. They all are attempting to solve a particular problem, and you have to identify the challenge in the industry, the solution, the product, how yours is going to work, all that stuff. And that makes a lot of sense. I had a website once called politics.com. I was the president of that. When I became the president, the stock tripled in value, and then we couldn't raise any money. But I had developed what a lot of people call the bulletproof business plan. But the challenge with the business plan was that I assumed that people cared about politics. And at that time, they didn't.
So maybe you need to start it again now, because everybody seems to care about politics and way too much about politics.
Been there, done that. Next subject.
He's like, I'm not going there, can't do it, won't do it. You're not going to make me do it whatsoever.
I was the star of that movie. It was a failure. I'm not interested.
Started that movie, don't want to start it again, don't want to do a remake. So he's like, nope, can't do it.
Nope.
Just out of curiosity, because we've talked about this on one of our other shows here on IBM.TV, and this is actually, I guess, a legal question. And it's, what is y'all's thoughts on the concept of having compulsory internet or compulsory telephones? Because a lot of folks are thinking, because of what's going on in education and the virtual world, that there's a lot of people that don't have access, that need to have access to the internet. So there's like this thought that we need compulsory internet, like mandatory that everybody has internet no matter what their class or thing is of that nature. Is that even legally possible? Or is it kind of like the compulsory election, that we probably can't have that here in the United States because it would have to be done by Supreme Court and all of that other kind of stuff?
Excuse me 1 second, please.
Yeah. Okay, Mark's handing out money. That's a good thing. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on that too, Q, while he's waiting? Do you think that you would love to have compulsory internet and things of that nature?
That would be wonderful, mainly because of the world as it is at hand today. But, if you can, you can. And if you can't, you can't. So I don't know about being compulsory, but, I'm all for it, having places where they could go and get on the internet, if they can't have it at home. But, with a phone, I think most people have it. Most people have phones.
I think that they've launched some plane, like a drone plane, and they intend that it will fly forever. You know what I mean? It's not supposed to be coming down. It's to provide internet service to remote areas of the world, in areas that they can't run these lines and whatnot. And then that's coupled with this some old guy in India that's an investor. I guess I don't know his name, but he's worth a lot of money, and he had the idea that he would try to create a way for people to get electricity. So he employed these engineers to come up with a bicycle that you can ride around town. But when you get home, you can reconfigure it so you sit on the couch and you can pedal it, and it'll power like a TV or a laptop or something, for 24 hours. After you pedal for a couple hours, it charges up a battery. So I think the two things in combination could actually provide internet services to all sorts of areas in the world that can't access it now. So hopefully that we'll see some changes and developments in that area in the next 20 years.
Yeah, I hope so. What were you thinking, Mr. Jacobson, in terms of like the whole concept of compulsory internet? Is that even possible, or is that kind of like the push for compulsory voting that it happens around other parts of the world, but here in the United States, we don't really go for it?
Well, I know that the Communications Decency Act and other federal statutes provide for low-cost internet access in rural areas where the cost of wiring them is high, and we all subsidize that in one way or another. But the United States is built on very few compulsory obligations for the entire populace. So making someone buy internet access, I think, would be fraught with challenges. Look at the challenges we had with making people buy health insurance. So it's, and that actually affects your life and keeps you alive. I'm not sure that the internet does that. I need to call it a day, and I appreciate being on this.
No, I appreciate you being on here, and I know, and I'm really actually going to wrap it up with everybody very shortly, but I do appreciate you giving your great insight. If you would, if you could share your website where folks can reach you, both our other two guests as well as folks that are watching and listening and things of that nature, and also we replay it on YouTube and, of course, the IBM TV Facebook page. So if you could just share with us how folks can reach out to you, then I'll let you step off and go take care of the rest of your workday and continue the conversation with Jamie and Too Cute, and then we'll go from there. But like I said, we'll get ready to wrap everything up very shortly. So don't worry, the two of you, because it's probably about another 10 or 15 minutes. But I do know Mr. Jacobson has to step off. So if you would, share how folks can reach you.
Yeah, it's my website is very simple. It's www.markjacobson.com. That's MarkJacobson.com. And my email is mark@markjacobson.com. So it's real easy. And you can find me pretty much on the internet very, very quickly.
Well,
Thanks,
I appreciate
Mark.
you being on here. You were a great guest. I appreciate the insight that you gave me. And you also spelled your name correctly. So glad to see that you do that also.
Nice to meet you, Too Cute. And nice to meet you, Jamie. Take care.
Mark.
Great talking
Bye-bye.
to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, so we still got a few more minutes before we have to bounce off and everything, but definitely got some great insight into what he was sharing and things of that nature. So when is your next show, Too Cute? And then I would like Jamie to talk about his musical background, because like I said, he got into his invention because he got out of music and is trying to get his son into music. So I want to hear a little bit about his musical background. But when is your next performance? Do you have anything coming up either online or in person? Because I do know that certain small venues are, venues in general are allowing small amount of people into their venues in certain places.
Yes, I will be at the Vinings Inn on August the 27th. I just started looking into, maybe going out and being some places in public, but right now I'm pretty much staying and working at home, and they're doing what I do on the internet and trying to get these videos ready to promote my products and, start this new campaign.
And that sounds like a great thing to do, starting that new campaign and everything of that nature. I asked you earlier, Too Cute, about whether anything surprised you about being a comedian in general. Did anything surprise you about being either one, a woman comedian, or two, a comedian in a certain age demographic that was different from just being a comedian in general? So was there anything
I can't speak to that because, I was a mature adult when I started, 16 years ago, when I first got on stage. Then, that's all I know is being a comedian my age. But I think maybe my age is because of the way that I approach what I do. And, like I said, I didn't want anybody telling me that they were going to pay me this little bit of money to perform. And no, that's not happening. So that's when I started doing the producing. And I'm, with all of the things that we've talked about today, that's become very dear to my heart, is trying to get artists to understand that you do have to create and look at this like a business and look at it from a business eye, because a lot of the artists that I work with are mature adults, and they think like they did back in the day when they were going to have a record contract or something like that. I'm like, y'all need to stop that. It's not going to happen. So, to take your career into your own hands and learn how to do it and find professionals to help you.
Yep, definitely agree with you on that. Jamie, tell folks just a little bit about your music background, because like I said, I know that you came up with this because of your own interest in music. So tell us what kind of music were you doing? Where were you doing this music performance at? So folks can know where you were calling us from and everything. But just tell about the music business and your own personal involvement in the music industry. And also tell us a little bit about I believe you said it was your son that's in music now. So what kind of music are they doing?
Well, first, I'd like to say to Cute here that, I'm turning 50 this year, and to contemplate starting a career in comedy or something like that. I mean, my hat's off to you. I mean, to actually, pursue that at that age. I kind of feel the same with this. I just want to kind of hand the gauntlet off to somebody else, and do an undertaking. But, I started out really young in the music business as far as, learning to play. I started maybe at 5 on the drums and bass when I was 7, 12 on the guitar. And I ended up, by the time I was old enough to enter the music scene playing out and stuff, it was the 80s. And so I did a lot of 80s hairspray, spandex type rock and roll. And I think that's where some of my mindset was created, that, if I hadn't made it by the time I was 30, I didn't believe that there was a chance for me to make it. So I kind of threw in the towel. I'd been in 2 different semi-national bands and got to fly around and pretend I was a rock star. But, all I ended up with was rock star syndrome. You know what I mean? And thinking that, well, we won't go into that part of it, but in the end, what I really realized was that, I was getting too old to try to pursue this career anymore. And I was wrong, because times had changed, and I probably should have stuck with it, because the next thing you know, the Bare Naked Ladies are coming out, and, some other bands that obviously people had gotten past the age thing. I was still in the mindset that if a label thought you were too old, they're not going to invest in you. They want to make money off of you for 20, 30 years. They don't want to just get somebody in their 40s, you know what I mean? So, but I know times have changed and people are a little less judgmental when it comes to your age. But, ultimately, I ended up just kind of washing out. And I think the last band that I was in semi-nationally, the Bangers, they got political. It was after 9/11 and everybody was all just, embracing the patriotic thing. And then we started doing, a bunch of military gigs and but in the end we got labeled as a right-wing, conservative band. And that don't fly in Hollywood. So you can only be a right-winger after you made it, you know what I mean? Spout off like he does and have a career. But everybody knows what the right thing is when it comes to this piracy thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be having this debate. I mean, I don't need to sit here. I could come up with a bunch of figures to try to combat the opinions of entertainment lawyers like Mark. But in the end, all I have to say is who cares what they want, who cares what management wants, who cares what the consumer wants. The artists need to protect themselves and get paid for what they do, and I hope the world sees the value in that. So after I washed out, going away from your question, but after I gave up on trying to make it nationally, I just started kind of doing some tribute bands and doing I did George Harrison, and after being a product of the 80s, and trying to be like Satriani and Vai, I'm really, really accomplished, and now they hand me this old country gentleman with a cord and an amp, just an old Vox amp, and it's like, make it happen. Well, to me, it was like trying to wrestle a dinosaur to the ground, It's just, and the facts that you could either play it or you can't. There's no big wall of effects and distortion to hide behind or anything like that. And not only that, I was used to jamming rock clubs, and with a lot of pressure, sound pressure, and crowd energy right up there to draw from, And then I found myself in a theater with a bunch of old people kind of just staring and waiting for you to play. And, it's so quiet. You could hear a nose hair hit the stage floor, and it's a real nerve-wracking type of experience. But I guess that's kind of what the extent of my music career has been afterward, has been doing a lot of tribute type bands. Did some Robert Plant, Zeppelin, and, David Lee Roth and Axlis Rose, David Lee Rothless, Axlis Rose, and Brettless Michaels. That was a few of the impersonations that I brought to the table. But
well, nothing wrong with tribute bands. Actually, some good friends of mine, and actually I know the drummer very well, plays in a band called Who's Bad, and that's actually a Michael Jackson tribute band that travels the world.
Goodness.
So they
talk about a tall order.
Yeah, that's a very tall order to try to work with Michael Jackson, but they've actually gotten a pretty good reputation. I know they've been to Dubai, they've been to some other places around the world traveling, and of course, they've been to Too Cute. We're talking about Vegas. They've been to Nevada. I think can't remember whether it's Reno or some of the other parts of Vegas, but they've definitely been to Nevada for sure. So what I can't remember is whether they had any engagements yet in Las Vegas, but I'm pretty sure they did. But they've traveled doing that, and I know some other folks that are doing tribute bands. So just, Jamie, what were some of the things just about the music industry in general that surprised you? I asked Too Cute some of the things that surprised her about comedy, but what were some of the things about the music industry that just surprised you when you were that young in the game?
Well, when I had already been out on the road probably 6 nights a week for a couple years before I decided to start working on my own original music, and got some money together for a digital studio and started recording. And that's when I found out how crappy of a singer I really was. I mean, and this is after having crowds of people shaking my hand, coming out the stage saying, dude, you rock. And I'm like, yeah. Well, then, step into the booth. And no matter what, to this day, if I'm honest, I could go in the booth and sing a song, and I'll come out and listen to it, and it could be 90%, but there's always going to be some 10% area where it's like, yeah. And where I'm getting at is it really opened up a whole new respect for me towards the older singers and that I never really respected, because in the 80s, it was all about putting your nuts in a vice and how high can you, sing and whatever. So if they weren't able to put on that kind of range and demonstrate that range, I just kind of thought, wow, what I didn't realize is the ability, to sing in key. And I don't care if you're talking about Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson just talking their way through a song, or, Mariah Carey singing this huge undertaking. It was when I realized way back when they didn't have all this digital stuff and the tracks, to bounce in and replace and dub in and whatnot. They had to actually sing those songs from beginning to end without any applause at all. And that just really blew me away the more I learned and discovered, what it really took to do that. And so that was one thing. And another thing, when I went to writing the songs and doing some publishing with the indie label that I was signed with, it was a big surprise to me to find out that, like Stairway to Heaven or something, for instance, one of the biggest songs of history, right? So, but who got the money? Who got the royalties? I would naturally assume it would be, Robert Plant, who came up with these lyrics and sang this melody line and, and shared that. The guy on the guitar, right? So to find out that you can't copyright, the lyrics, it's the music, right? That here he's the one that actually publishing rights or the copyright, for the music. And so that was a big surprise to me that, just the person who writes the music with these 12 notes that we have would trump, a creative, works like the lyrics and the melody line that you're creating to it. Does that make any sense? I'm just trying to say, I never realized that. Yeah, the guy who just makes the music is getting all the credit. So that was real eye-opening.
That makes a lot of sense. And we actually need to get ready to wrap up. Need to get ready to wrap up really quickly because I got another show I got to get ready to get on. But this has been a tremendous conversation. I want to invite all of you back. I meant to tell Marc Jacobson that as well. But definitely would love to have y'all come back on and everything. But as far as the age thing and everything, one of my favorite musicians is a gentleman who I believe is pushing over 80, but I'm a old time blues head, meaning I love the jazz, I love the blues, and I love stuff like that. Buddy Guy is still kicking it. Buddy Guy is still doing some tremendous music and is an amazing musician. I don't know if you've ever seen him perform, but he runs up and down the stage like some of those young rockers and does a great job of it because, like I said, even at his age, you're sitting there going like, I can't believe that you're 80 or whatever age that he is, but I know it's definitely around that age.
From Jethro Tull is same. I mean, just you can't believe he's like David Lee Roth running around. It's but yes, I appreciate the time being here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And I had Too Cute. You gave your website once before, one other time. I want you to do that again. But before we get to you, because I'll close out with you and everything, Jamie, tell folks how they can reach you. They've heard a lot about the product and what you're trying to do. So if they want to help you with what you're doing, how can folks reach you that are listening and might want to help you with this endeavor?
Well, Production Pal, one word, at Gmail is my email address. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. The website, I hadn't gone and gotten a domain for this exactly. I have another domain that I'm pushing, another startup, but so I kind of tacked it onto that. It's really super long, but it's you just enter in audio protection device.thepricepatrol.com and you'll be able to access the presentation. If you have trouble finding the website, just shoot me an email and I'll send you the link, productionpal.com or at Gmail, .com. So.
I knew what you meant. Sounds great, Jamie.
Anybody
I appreciate that.
I
don't think that I ever actually gave folks the last name and everything. So, Jamie, tell folks the last name and everything, and then we'll go to Too Cute.
Yeah, Jamie Boxell at productionpal@gmail.com. The audio, not the audio, just audio protection device .thepricepatrol.com. So, clear as mud.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it, Jamie.
All
that
right,
was
thank you so much, you guys.
No problem.
All right. How do you sign out of this thing?
Yeah, I'll hit remove, and that's how we do it. So
there you go.
Oh. Well, I think he was thanking us. I probably hit it too soon, but that's okay. That's just the way life goes sometimes. But definitely great conversation. I really enjoyed us talking and learning a lot about the entertainment industry. Had the gentleman with the product. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And of course, we've learned about your shows and things of that nature. And of course, Marc Jacobson giving us some really good legal insight and business planning insight. So things of that nature. It's been tremendous, great conversation. So I appreciate you being on. And
far exceeded my expectations.
Well, I'm glad to know that. Glad that it exceeded your expectations and things of that nature. So folks can, once again, tell them where they can go to your website to find out more about what you've got going on performance-wise. And I think you said you had a YouTube channel as well. So if you want to share that, you can.
That's www.tukute.net. And my YouTube is just THE Too Cute.
Sounds good. And you're definitely that. Because like I said, you were teasing earlier talking about how when folks first meet you, they just have to know that you're just trying to live up to your reputation and things of that nature. So you're definitely doing that. I've been trying to figure out what the hat was because I was thinking it was an AKA, but then I'm thinking it's not AKA. So I'm not sure what the hat is standing for. So what's the hat all about?
It's Alaska.
Okay.
My roommate is actually from Alaska, and she was Miss Alaska in 1984 when Sarah Palin came in second place.
Wow.
She won.
She beat Sarah Palin. So she actually beat Sarah Palin for Miss Alaska. So that is a wonderful thing. And then Sarah tried to become vice president and went down in flames in that one too. So apparently she's got a good history of not winning.
She, yes, but my roommate won the election for Smyrna City Council. So they had a lot in common.
Okay, so they both done the political thing as well as the Miss America competitions and things of that nature. So just really quickly, like I said, I know we are winding down, but apparently Mr. Biden is going to pick a vice president. There are two candidates that have been getting noticed from Georgia. So do you think he's going to pick either Miss Stacey Abrams or I forget the other young lady, the lady that's the mayor
Miss Harris. Miss Harris.
Kamala Harris, I know, is another candidate, but it's the other lady that's the mayor of Atlanta. I think it's I want to say Keisha Bottoms or something like that, but I know that she's been floated as a name as well. So who do you think it's going to be?
I don't, I was for Stacey Abrams, and then Keisha's been stepping up to the plate. I mean, I like strong women, and, they both are. And I think that, to me, there's room for both of them. If they work together, we're like Flint. I mean, seriously, because they're both very strong women, and they're smart, and they make sense, and we could use a little of that.
We can definitely be some sensitive because we've had some folks making a lot of nonsense lately and tweeting and doing other things that they don't need to be doing. And I agree with you. All the ladies that are being considered, I can see them in different offices, even if they're not vice president. Because even Kamala, and I know you mentioned her, I can see her as attorney general. I can see some of the other ones sitting in as like Secretary of State and a number of other jobs that Biden will have to fill. So I definitely think that there is a strong place for many of those ladies that are being considered in office and everything. And just real quick, because I mentioned it, we were touching on it on the beginning. You said you had not had any protests there that much in Smyrna, but if you would just share some of your thoughts on Black Lives Matter and if you think that we are moving in the right direction in terms of race relations. And then from that, we'll close everything out and get ready for the next show that we've got here. But definitely, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Oh, but that's going to take us way too long. But yes, being Black and being female, I get it both ways. So, especially in my industry, where I am. And I think that it's important that we've come this far and brought it to the attention of people that so many people think that that's not an issue anymore. Really, so many people think that that's not an issue. And I'm glad that it's brought to the forefront, but I'm sad that there's been people to come through and try to make those peaceful protests something that was violent. And I appall that. I really do, because they can be peaceful and they have been peaceful and they've been sabotaged,
Yeah, but I agree with you. And there's some folks in there that definitely have that kind of attitude of wanting to sabotage things. And I think that a lot of times it's about having positive thoughts and positive changes. Even like I know some friends of mine that have that whole thing of defunding the police. I've got a cousin who's actually from Georgia. We actually just laid his dad to rest a week ago today. So we laid him to rest, my uncle Skip, but we laid him to rest. But Jonathan is a GBI officer. So I do understand the need for police and the need for police things to have police force, but at the same time, I do think that there needs to be some reform in the criminal justice situation and things of that nature. So definitely, I do think that we need some reforms and need to get rid of some of those bad cops and things of that nature, and even the way that we handle the African Americans in the criminal justice system. So I can definitely agree with you that there needs to be some changes made in that system. And I'm thinking that you probably agree with me on that we've got to make some changes, but it doesn't mean that we don't want there not to be law and order and to have law in the land and things of that nature. But there's got to be a better way and a better system.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So on that note, I'll get ready to wrap it all up. It's been great having you on, Too Cute. I hope that you'll come back on another time. And because, like I said, you're always welcome to come back whenever you feel like sharing your insight or just sharing what other shows you've got going on. Because this is IBM.TV. We have other tremendous shows, as I was telling you before we got started, shows that include things like Alexandria May, who is a young lady singer-songwriter out of South Africa. So she does a show on Sunday evenings our time on the East Coast. She's actually in South Africa, so I'm not even sure what time that is where she is. And then we have my buddy Jim Ead that does a chess show. We've also got my good buddy Zach that does 2 funk shows, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. Tish does like a holistic show dealing with like yoga, meditation, planting the seed of positive energy and things of that nature. So those are just some of the shows that we have here on a regular basis. So definitely go to IBM.TV, learn more about what we've got going on, because we have
Yes, I've been there ever since you contacted me. I've been there, so I'm familiar. So I'll make sure I get to watch some things.
Sounds good, and I do appreciate you for watching those shows and checking out what we're about, and hopefully more people will be doing that on a regular basis. I'll actually be passing this on to you so you can share it on your platforms as well. And we look forward to seeing you back in the very near future. So this has been the radio show with Marc Lee. And as I just said, we're here to wrap everything up, but I do have a after show that'll be coming up at 4:00. So we'll have that discussion going on. And then, of course, my regular podcast, which is the regular call-in show, Straight Talk with Dean and Mark, will be coming your way at 7:00. But that is not with the wonders of video and audio. It's just strictly an audio show. And we've actually got a gentleman that I believe ran for governor in Florida. So he's just down the road from you. But Cal, who is a member of one of the African-American fraternities, I believe if I remember Dean telling me correctly, he's a Q. So they will be on that show talking about his effort to run in state politics. And like I said, he was a wild card and a long shot. But sometimes those long shots are the ones that can surprise you with all kinds of issues that they bring to the table. So I'm looking forward to that conversation and seeing what that's about. And Roberta, a young lady who's worked in both media as well as with various nonprofits, she'll be joining us as well. So she's actually worked with some of the national networks and things of that nature. So it should be a lively conversation on that show also. So definitely go to blogtalkradio.com/squared807 and check that out.
Okie dokie. Thank you so much.
No
Bye-bye.
problem. Take it easy. And like I was saying to the fans and everybody, we will definitely be having that show coming in about another few minutes, the after show that comes on Monday. So, I do have more programming coming your way. So definitely stay right here on IBM.TV. And we're going to have some more interesting discussions about all kinds of things. So definitely looking forward to having our guest on that show. And I'm going to go jump online and see who's there waiting for me, because I've invited a number of people. But I hope that you learned a lot about things like entertainment law. Things like, hey, is Elvis still around or not? That was a nice little running joke that Mark Jacobson was giving us, and things of that nature. But he also talked about working with some major acts and talked about some of the things that he's done in his industry. And of course, Too Cute was talking about business as well as being a stand-up comedian and things along those lines. And then we had Jamie talking about his product that is trying to fight with piracy and things of that nature. I need to get him in connection with Kim, because Kim is our one of our major executives here. And of course, she's been involved with inventions as well. So definitely I need to get them connected and to see if they can have a conversation about ways to make what he's trying to do happen. Because if it's going to be a product that is needed, I don't see why it can't be in the free market. Like I said, we'll find out if it's actually needed. And that's sort of what he's trying to do, is find out the need for it. But he definitely finds that musicians probably do need it and do want it. So looking forward to those great conversations, and glad that y'all could join me here on this particular Monday afternoon. So on that note, I'm going to sign out and get ready to bring up the other show. But I hope that y'all had a tremendous time watching this lively conversation and discussion.